Hello. It's that time of year again. And no, I'm not just talking about grads and dads, and I'm not even really referring to Juneteenth, even though those will be topics and issues that we'll get into on today's show. Talking about it's that time of year again, as former President Barack Obama would say, the silly season. The silly season when the new elected candidates for president will be starting to put their name into the hat. And now they're beginning to start their campaigns and trying to sway voters to put them in office again, or not again, but put them in office at all. So, and I say again because one candidate who's putting their name into the hat is very familiar to all of us, and we definitely would not want that individual in office again. But there's going to be some interesting candidates who is going to be coming up. We're going to be talking about that on today's short reaction. But we thank you for tuning in. But again, this is that time of year where there's a lot of celebratory things that are happening, a lot of challenging things that are happening today in our society as well. It's just recently reported a couple episodes ago, we talked about Cheryl Parker, who was just recently elected the Democratic nominee to be the mayor of Philadelphia. And that is almost a pre-impetus of the individual becoming the mayor, because once you win the primary in Philadelphia, generally the next step is to win the general election and then be seated as the mayor of Philadelphia. But that is yet to be seen. We don't want to put the cart before the horse, if you will, but that is how the landscape is shaping out. So that's a historical thing that's happened in Philadelphia. But then also, again, across the nation, we have, again, the candidates who are putting their name into the hat to become the next president of the United States. And that race is beginning to, if you will, heat up in the campaign for individuals who are putting their name in there. It's beginning to be rather interesting. Again, some of the names are familiar, some of them are not. But we'll get into that as well. What I really want to talk to lead off with, though, is there's been a really interesting situation shaping up in the city of Philadelphia, or in the tri-state area as a whole, when there was a recent situation with a tanker truck caught fire underneath the highway in Interstate 95. Now, many of you who are watching may not be aware, Interstate 95 is a major thoroughfare up and down the East Coast. It has a lot of impact on a lot of things as far as commuters, as far as people traveling for vacation. And also, one of the things that may or not be talked about as much, how it will impact us economically. Now, I'm not just talking about the economics of how much it's going to cost to repair that bridge. As you can see, the devastating damage that was done there by the fire that was caused there on the interstate. I'm talking about the economics in terms of produce and supply and demand. Interstate 95 is traveled by over 160,000 drivers on that interstate. 18% of those, or 8% of those, I should say, are truck drivers with cargo and supplies and materials and the likes. This is going to be challenging on an economic level, because when we look at that, we're going to then begin to see how this is going to dramatically change the cost of certain supplies and certain goods that we normally would be having at this time when they're being delivered and when they're being shipped and sent to us. Let me play this video clip.
Trucker friendly.
Tuesday's haul for driver Zach Combs would have normally taken him on I-95 as he drove from York, Pennsylvania to Lakewood, New Jersey, but the miles-long shutdown took him everywhere but.
It took another 45 minutes to an hour to get anywhere, so I had to plan that in my day, and we're already facing a timer when we start.
We have about Rebecca Euler with the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association says, at last check, some 14,000 trucks pass through the impacted area of I-95 every day. Right now, the association is telling their members to look for routes even outside of the one PennDOT recommends, which includes using Route 1.
Putting 14,000 trucks on an area with 60 stoplights is not going to be ideal, as anyone can recognize. So we are concerned about that.
Euler echoes what we heard from truck drivers. Many of the detours they believe aren't suitable for truck traffic.
They're going to have to take breaks. Some of these areas on these local roads are not made to accommodate trucks.
When it comes to consumers, experts say expect delivery delays and a possible bump in the cost of goods. As for Combs, well, he feels the next few months without I-95 are going to be a headache
And so, as we can see from that, just that video clip and what they were sharing on that clip, is that one of the dramatic things that's going to increase is the cost of goods because of the delay of the demand and the supply being delivered and being received. So, we're going to see a dramatic 95 situation will dramatically impact our normal economic standing as well as a normal commute as well. So it's going to be a really challenging situation with I-95 and the repairs that's going to take place. And a lot of reports indicate that these repairs are going to take anywhere on the upwards of 6 months to maybe even a year to maybe even longer. So with that being the case, I know Governor Shapiro is doing all he can to get disaster relief funds to the area so that they can expedite some of the repairs. But as we think about, again, the economics of it all, think about how this is going to have a spillover impact into our local communities, where the supply and demand of goods, whether that's groceries, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's any type of trade or any type of technology, any type of service industry goods that are going to be needed. Think about how that's going to be impacted. Think about how that's going to dramatically be changed. And that's going to cause a wellspring of different situations. And it may even lead to a lot of heightened frustrations that we're going to have to be ready to deal with. So it's not just the commuters that are going to get, if you will, road rage. There's going to be everyday citizens who maybe don't even travel that way, but just, again, need supplies, need goods, need things that are coming up and down 95. That may or may not get there in an expedited or timely fashion. And then when it does get there, the cost and increase of those goods may have dramatically changed because, again, fuel consumption, fuel usage, I should say, for the truck drivers that may change because they're now in the road a little bit longer. The time that they're going to be compensated for and all those other things, and the cost of that delivery. So all that's going to be dramatically changed. And again, it's not just going to be having an impact on the commuters, it's going to be impact on the consumers as well. So this Interstate 95 situation in Philadelphia is going to be extremely, extremely challenging, extremely, cautious for us to take in terms of how we should manage this situation on every level. So it's going to be something we're going to have to really keep our thumb on the pulse on, and really just make sure that we keep ourselves in an understanding mode as to how it's going to have rippling effects, not just for traffic, but also for trade and commerce as well. That's going to be something we're going to keep our eye on continually, that situation with Interstate 95, because it's really, really, really going to be something that's changing the way things are happening in the city and across the tri-state area and up and down the East Coast as a whole, if you will. But also want to transition now to a topic that many of us will be taking note, which is Juneteenth, Freedom Day, June 19th. We all know the importance of June 19th. That was a Freedom Day when Galveston Texans were notified that they were no longer enslaved. The enslaved people there were no longer enslaved, and they were just notified at that time, June 19th, 1865. And now it's become a celebratory day for us to realize that we are now in a position to celebrate this day with the recognition of not the total elimination, but the emancipation in a lot of regards of the ending of slavery at that particular time. And it became a celebratory thing. Well, I want to say thing. It became a celebratory moment for Black people for many years, but it became a national holiday just recently with President Biden June 17th, 2021, signed Juneteenth into law as a national holiday. Let me play this clip from President Biden.
Starbucks claimed Phillips appeared.
To acknowledge the origin of the original sin of slavery, to understand the war was never fought over it. It wasn't just about the Union, but it was most fundamentally about the country and freedom. To remember the Emancipation Proclamation wasn't just a document. It captured the essence of freedom that galvanized the country. It proved that some ideas are more powerful. They can't be denied. It's a reminder that the promise of America is we all are created equal in the image of God, and we deserve to be treated equally throughout our entire lives. We're the most unique country in the world. Other countries are founded based on faith, on ethnicity, on other things, religion. But we are founded on an idea, unlike any other country in the world. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. While we never fully lived up to that promise, we've never walked away from it either. On our best days, enough of us have the guts and the heart to stand up for the best in us. It matters. It really matters. As the past few years remind us, our freedoms have been put at risk by racism that's still too powerful a force. You know, I was a kid in the civil rights movement. And I used to think, I honestly believe that you could defeat hate. But hate only hides. It hides under the rocks. And when given oxygen, just a little oxygen, it comes roaring back out again. And we have to stand up and deny the oxygen. So Juneteenth, as a federal holiday, is meant to breathe a new life into the very essence of America. To make sure all Americans feel the power of this day and the progress we can make as a country. To choose love over hate, unity over disunion, and progress over retreat.
That was from President Biden as he was speaking about the importance of Juneteenth and how signing it into law ends a lot of the ideologies and a lot of the mindsets and a lot of the thought patterns and situations that have been oppressing Black and brown people for over centuries of time. Now that it's placed into national holiday, it is now going to be a celebratory thing that's going to be openly dialogued and talked about so that people of color and Black people can realize now that Juneteenth, the importance of that day is no longer just a symbolic importance. It's importance in terms of its totality of how it embolizes and symbolizes the end of a situation that really marred this nation and created a scar in the fabric and the tissue of our society. But now the healing process can begin with that. Now the healing process can begin with us understanding that Juneteenth, the celebratory nature of it, is something that we can embrace and go forward in. And I'll just read a couple of quotes here. Every Black person you meet is a miracle. We are as valuable because of our humanity and declare valuable because our ancestors declared our worth when they fought for us to live. That's important because as we talk about the Juneteenth celebratory nature, we talk about the importance of how Black people endured and how we overcame and how those challenges that we overcame symbolizes the success, symbolizes the fight, symbolizes the freedom that we are now embracing because of what our ancestors laid down. So it's important for us to understand that we are valuable in that space. And Juneteenth isn't just a celebratory day just to witness the ending of what was an atrocious mar in the nation, but it's also a beginning of the valuing of Black and brown people, of who we really are and our contribution to this world and to this nation. So it's a celebratory in that regard. So we should always embrace that because it was what was fought for and is now what we actually are seeing the evidence of us achieving. And also what Maya Angelou wrote, hold those things that tell your history and protect them. During slavery, who was able to read or write or keep anything? The ability to have someone tell your story is so important. It says, I was here. I may be sold tomorrow, but you know I was here. And that's important because, again, what Maya is saying in this quote, protect our history. And Juneteenth is an opportunity, again, for Black and brown people to be able to realize we can protect our history. We no longer have to have our story be told by others who do not understand our story and or who do not have the ancestral connection to our story. It is vitally important for Juneteenth to be looked at as not just, again, a celebratory day off or a day which marks the time when Black people can have their freedom day, It's a day of realizing how history needs to honor the presence of the Black and brown people, the enslaved individuals who helped build this nation, and recognize their fair contribution, to let them know that they were here and that their presence on this earth, on this side, meant something, as it did then, as it will now, as it will continue to always do. So Juneteenth is really, really an important day for Black people, Black and brown people, to really be able to celebrate not just the end of slavery, but the beginning of the realization of the importance of the presence that they had, we have in this world as we lend to our society, the great things that we're always going to be lending. And it's not just in the space of entertainment and athletics. It's in various other forms of way that we contribute to our society as a whole. And Juneteenth is a day we need to celebrate that, because that is, again, as that quote from Maya Angelou said, that's what we have fought for. That is what our ancestors have fought for. The recognition of our presence in this society. And that's extremely important for us to know. That's why Juneteenth, again, there's a lot of events that's going to be happening locally. It's going to be a lot of events happening nationally. But take time to embrace those events and take in the, not just, again, the symbolic meaning, but the true essence of the meaning of what it is to have freedom, and then be acknowledged for your contribution to a society that at once denigrated you. And now is the time for that society to embrace you and to lift you up, to lift us up, and to celebrate our great accomplishments, and not just the freedom that we have, but our contribution to the society in which we all live in the world that we all are a part of. So Juneteenth coming up Monday, and if there's an event or if anything happening, I would encourage you to go out and participate and embrace it, and take in the total meaning of it, and not just in a celebratory sense, but in a recognition and acknowledgement sense. So Juneteenth, every year, Freedom Day, freedom of speech, freedom of idea, freedom of living, freedom of contribution, freedom of all kinds. So Juneteenth coming up. So one of the things I want to talk about too now, as I mentioned earlier, is that time of year when the political candidates are positioning themselves to be now candidates for president. And we have several candidates that are now listing themselves for that office as the Republicans. We have the usual suspects. We have Ron DeSantis. We have Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Brian Brinkley, Doug Broman, Chris Christie, Larry Elder, Asha Hutchinson, Perry Johnson, Vicky Ramzemwa, and Tim Scott. We have the favorites, we have the contenders, we have the long shots, and a few maybes. All within this is boiled into who is going to fight and who is going to really, if you will, battle and try and sway these ideologies that are really still Trumpian in a lot of ways. And I know Trump is one of the people that is there, but when you think about these candidates that are running from the Republican Party, they're really still positioning themselves in a lot of ways to really still be in that same vein of Trumpian. And what I mean by that is that there's no ideas that are going to be different than what Trump had really exposed to during his time of presidency. Now, of course, he's positioned himself back into the mix, and he's actually now, unfortunately, one of the favorites. And when him being one of the favorites, think about some of the things that he instituted. Think about the way he led, if you will, or was in charge of leading this nation. And where was it before he got there? Where is it now? What is the damages that were done? And think about the ideology of the people who supported him. 73 million people voted for Donald Trump. 73 people believed in his misogynistic ideologies. And even though he's being indicted on several counts now, he's still one of the favorite candidates. And also one of the favorite candidates is Ron DeSantis, who in and of himself is problematic on every level in terms of how he thinks about critical race theory, how he thinks about Black history, how he thinks about Black and brown people as a whole, how he's looking to eliminate some of the reading materials that would open the minds and eyes and understanding of some of our youth, Black and brown as a whole. But he's not really into that. He's into more controlling and more making sure that a certain special interest group, i.e. primarily rich upper class white men are still in control of how society's information, laws, and legislation is meted out. And Ron DeSantis is one of the leading candidates as a Republican candidate for mayor. How is this going to be if it plays itself out? If he becomes the Republican nominee, what platform agendas will he be pushing? And how will people get to support an individual like this? Think about the people who will support someone like a Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. Not to mention any of the others that are out there. I mean, we have problematic individuals, Larry Elder, Tim Scott, and Chris Christie. We have those individuals we could talk about ad nauseum. But I really just want to focus on for a moment the two favorites, Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, because neither of them will offer anything beneficial to Black and brown people or anything to the nation as a whole. Their ideology is steeped in, again, misogynistic ideas, racism in a lot of regards, and challenging towards the uplifting and movement forward of our people. But this is the silly season, again, as Barack Obama would say. And this is the time of year when these candidates will start to begin positioning themselves and start making their campaign push towards the presidency. We need to keep our eye on these individuals. We need to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's happening and listen, as it always says, beneath the words, so that society can really understand, and you and I as voters can really get a good feel for who's going to be the next president of the United States, and making sure that that individual will have better understanding of how to impact our society as a whole, and not just for any specific one or two special interest group or own individual ideology that they have in and of themselves. So let's continue to watch over that. But what's really making news today is this story that just recently came out, a verdict, I should say, that just recently came out. Former Starbucks manager Shannon Phillips was awarded $25.6 million. And her claims, and the reason why she was awarded that, she was fired for being Black. Excuse me, she was fired for being white. Now imagine, I know I made a mislip there because it's typically that's the case when people are fired because they're Black, but she's claiming she was fired for being white. That right there has so many problems and challenges, in my opinion, because not only does it takes no essence into account of the traumatic experience that the two young men experienced during that time when they were being escorted out of Starbucks in April of 2018. No longer does it give impact to the racial discrimination of that particular moment, but those two Black men experienced. Not only does it take away from the impact of any of the challenges that Black and brown people have to face in terms of having their voice be heard and having their understanding be felt and having them be able to elevate in spaces, but it also now recenters whiteness in another challenging way. It takes it from being a Karen where white women can cry and get their way out of it to now being, if you will, a Sharon, where they can now take it to the legal effort, to the legal courts and say, hey, you can't do this to me because I'm white. Now, mind you, the whole situation played itself out because there was an arrest of two Black men who were in Starbucks, rightfully so, doing a normal socializing, conducting business, but they thought the employees and the manager there thought that they were trespassing. So they felt as though those two young men were a threat. And Shannon Phillips, she was one of the individuals who managed a region of stores in Starbucks. And because of her lack of leadership, because of her lack of understanding of the true essence of how to handle and de-escalate and repair that situation, Starbucks felt as though she was no longer a good representation of their brand and of their company. So she was removed from her position. But she fought back and said the only reason that Starbucks did that was because, again, she was white and because they wanted to appease the Black community, if you will, or the society as a whole. Now, I find that challenging because she's playing the race card from the white side. She's saying, I was fired because I was white. And had I not been white, I would not have been fired. Now, her whiteness did play a role in that because, again, if she's the manager of stores in that area, then she should have a responsibility overall to make sure that equity is being achieved in every level so that employees on every regard are being treated well, as far as also the customers are being treated as well at the same time. Let me play a clip of what Starbucks said in response to why they released Ms. Phillips from her position.
Overwhelmed, frozen, and lacked awareness of how critical the situation was for Starbucks and its partners, and that all actions taken by Starbucks with respect to Ms. Phillips were for legitimate, non-discriminatory, non-retaliatory reasons.
See, so Starbucks was saying that they removed Ms. Phillips not because of her race, not because of she was a woman, and not because of any other reason, but because she just lacked leadership in those moments. She lacked the ability to look at that situation and to be able to help resolve it in a way that brings forth an understanding of what really that brand, that organization, and that community is all about. But she didn't see it that way. She played, if you will, again, the Sharon card. I'm going to sue you and say you fired me because I was white. Now, the challenging part about that is that during this whole court proceedings, there was a black Starbucks manager who said that he was not fired during that whole situation. He thinks that he kept his job because he was black. And that may be true. So two things can be true. Yes, Starbucks may have been looking at the situation and not wanting to cause any ill will in the community and remove the manager who they thought had the most direct impact or who demonstrated the lack of leadership in that space. And that happened to be Miss Phillips. And this other manager who said that he was not fired because he was black, or he was not fired and he was black. We are not sure, and it does not say, but that manager may have showed a level of leadership in that space that Starbucks thought was acceptable. We don't know. But I do know, as again, the court records state that the black manager said that he thought because he was black, he was not fired. But again, it does not tie into the fact that maybe Starbucks also may have thought he just demonstrated good leadership too. But overall, Starbucks was not found in favor in that situation. They were ordered to pay $25.6 million to Ms. Phillips, which I think is an egregious amount, given the fact that I'm not really sure how much Starbucks managers make, but $25.6 million for punitive damages and the additional amount also for compensation, back and forth compensation. I find that really to be challenging because it opens up a Pandora's box for now. If this isn't appealed and if this isn't further remedied in a legal sense in terms of this total amount of $25.6 million, that will open up the door for other white people, white women in particular, to play the reverse race card and say, such and such happened to me because I was a white woman. Such and such happened to me because I was white. And that just makes it an unfair playing advantage for black people in terms of how we want to position ourselves for any type of justice and any type of reconciliation and any type of resolution in situations where race really is a factor. White folk can now start playing a race card. That's a game changer. And for black folk, that game may be over. Not that we play the race card to our advantage, to a benefit, to make it not as important. But I'm just saying, once white people start playing the race card, that changes the game. And again, may make the game be over for us. So that's something, again, we want to really keep our eye on and really be mindful of. So she was awarded $25.6 million. But as we wrap up, I do want to say Happy Father's Day and congratulations to the class of 2023. So to all you fathers that are out there, I want to congratulate you for the great work that you're doing. And to all the graduates of 2023 on every level, I want to say congratulations to you. And I hope that you continue to exceed and excel in whatever endeavor you are stepping into in this next phase of your life. So congratulations to the class of 2023. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And again, celebrate Juneteenth for the meaning and purpose of what it really is. Thank you again for watching Reaction TV Show.